Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call this session of the Board of Revision to order and begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 41st Nation and Treaty 3 territory. My name is Harvey Diamond. I'm chairing this hearing, and with me today is Faye Branson and Diane Knight. The City Assessment Department is represented by Ryan Valderrama, and our administrative assistant is Sally Caulfield. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment rules in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision are requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing must be sworn testimony, and anyone speaking will first have to be sworn in. Be advised, the comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered as evidence of market value by our board. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by council and is independent of it and the city administration. We make our decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at the hearing, and we issue written orders that we mail to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decision with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or to classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to an application for exemption from taxation. And should you wish to appeal, information on do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by any questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by any questions. And each side will be given an opportunity to summarize if you wish to do so. Once all the evidence upon an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and render its decisions. You will receive the board's decision by written mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of a public record. We'll be hearing today items 1 through 6 on the docket. And Ms. Caulfield, you can please swear in the parties at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Ryan Valderrama.
Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
Jared Story.
Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Valderrama, we're ready to proceed with the first item on the agenda today, which is the one at 1710 Portage Avenue. And you can take us when you're ready.
Mr. Chair, may I please put the panel member into the waiting room?
You can. Oh, certainly. Who is?
It's me here, Harvey. It's Diane.
Okay, Diane. Yes. Okay, we'll just go with you for the hearing, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Valderrama, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first property has a file number of 22-2690. It has a roll number of 0700095900. The property is located at 1710 Portage Avenue. We're dealing with the roll year of 2023 using reference date of April 1st, 2021. The assessed value is $25,524,000. The classification is residential 2 with the liability of taxable. The property is a residential apartment with 3 buildings, 17 stories with an actual and effective year built of 1968. It has 200 suites with 141 indoor parking and 63 outdoor parking stalls. The property is zoned as residential multifamily. It has a land area of 115,395 square feet, a planned area of 22,168 square feet, and a basement area of 53,555 square feet. Excuse me. It has a total gross floor area of 212,241 square feet. And we may proceed to page 3. is the aerial photo of the subject property. And page 4 is the income valuation summary. Again, there are 200 units with an average monthly rent per unit of $1,301.79. The gross potential rent is $3,124,296. The vacancy rate is 3.2% or $99,977. It has an effective gross income of $3,024,319. Expense ratio is 51.05%, or $1,543,915. The net operating income comes down to $1,480,404. The capitalization rate is 5.8%, and the capitalized income is $25,524,207, or $25,524,000 rounded. On the next page, page 5 are some rent comparables. The first one is located at 140 Ferry Road. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,347. The second one is located at 130 Strauss Drive. Average monthly rent per unit for that one is $1,408. The third one is located at 429 Westwood Drive. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,261. And the last one is located at 233 Booth Drive. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,395. Next page is the map of the subject property and rent comparables. And on page 7 and page 8 are some capitalization rate chart and capitalization rate evidence. If I may go through this once, Mr. Chair, and these 2 pages will be carried over to the rest of the properties we will be hearing today.
That's satisfaction,
That's
Mr. Valderrama, but Ms. Knight was not available to hear this evidence, so you might want to repeat it on the next one for a second time for her benefit, and otherwise, absolutely, we can have it carried forward. Otherwise, okay?
Sounds good, Mr. Chair. Okay,
Okay,
on
go ahead.
page 7, yes. On page 7, the capitalization rates, a direct capitalization rate method or direct capitalization method is used to convert a property's single year of income into an indication of value by dividing the estimated net operating income by an appropriate capitalization rate. Capitalization rates can be derived from properties that have sold by dividing each property's net operating income by its sale price. For the 2023 general assessment, using April 1st, 2021 as a reference date, capitalization rates were derived from model-generated estimates of net operating income and sale prices that were time-adjusted to April 1st, 2021. The assessed values produced by the application of these model-generated capitalization rates were compared to the sale prices, and assessment to sale price ratios were calculated. The resulting ratio statistics for the assessment and taxation department's income-producing model satisfy the standards specified and set forth in the Standard on Ratio Studies as approved in April 2013 and published by the International Association of Assessing Officers, or IAAO. ATD's capitalization rates are further supported by comparison with real estate market reports from Colliers International Canada, CBRE National Research, and Cushman and Wakefield. The following chart compares ATD's capitalization rates with the published rates by fitting ATD's rates into the property type categories used in these reports. ATD's property type classes are more comprehensive so that they cover every property type in the city. The 20th and 80th percentiles show the range of capitalization rates used by ATD for 60% of the parcels within the specific property type. In many cases, the published rates fall within the 20th and 80th percentiles, indicating the tenability of the capitalization rates derived by ATD. And if we look at the chart, second to the last one or to the bottom is the multifamily. All property types have 20th percentile of 4.8% to 80th percentile of 5.6%.
Thank you.
And on page 8 is the capitalization rate evidence. The following is a sample of actual sales that took place during the reference period. The purpose for showing these individual capitalization rates is to illustrate the accuracy of the model and substantiate the model-derived capitalization rates. They are not meant to be comparables specific to the subject property. Net operating income has been derived or developed through stabilizing owner-reported income and expense information. Capitalization rates have been derived by dividing the property's net operating income by its sale price. The first one in the sales is located at 2390 McPhillips. It was sold on October 9, 2020. It was sold for 19.4 million. It has 90 suites with a year built and effective age of 2015. And it has a calculated cap rate of 4.79%. Second one is located at 700 St. Mary's. It was sold on April 7, 2020 and sold for $1,035,000. It has 9 suites. It has year built and effective age of 1961. And it has a calculated capitalization rate of 3.6%. The third one is located at 203 Bertrand. It was sold on June 14, 2019. It was sold for $925,000. It has 9 suites. It has a year built and effective age of 1963, and it has a calculated cap rate of 4.77%. The next one is located at 555 Corridon. It was sold on November 26, 2018. It was sold for $1,575,000. It has 16 suites. It has a year built and effective age of 1955. It has a calculated cap rate of 5.74%. The next one is located at 677 Maryland. It was sold on December 15, 2020. It was sold for $2.4 million. It has 32 suites. It has a year built of 1913 and an effective age of 1972. It has a calculated cap rate of 5.5%. And the last one is located at 32 Arden. It was sold on March 1st, 2019 for $2,875,000. It has 23 suites with a year built of 1969 and effective age of 1984. It has a calculated cap rate of 5.05%. And beginning of page 9 to page 15 is the 2020 income and expense information for the subject property. That's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Story, do you have any questions?
I just have a few. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Boardroom, have you ever visited this property?
No, I haven't.
Okay, and I believe that you left us on a mention of the INEs that were submitted. Did you consider the INEs in preparation for our exercise here today?
I looked at it and I still went with the model-derived parameters on
Okay,
page 4.
can we agree that what they're reporting on that top line for 2020 residential rent is out of sorts, certainly, from what the model is suggesting? There's a fair delta there. Would you agree with me?
Let me just double check on that one. Can you repeat the question again? Sorry.
Yes. They're reporting $2,605,480 in rents for the relevant year. The model is suggesting $3,124,296. So I suppose my question is, why did you then defer to the model if there was indeed such a delta between what's being reported and what's being modeled?
There's a difference between that. I believe the model is reporting 3.1 million. However, it is also reporting a vacancy rate, and it's not also reporting any other income. So effective gross, if we look at the bottom line of the revenue at effective gross and the total income and the expense or income and expense information, there's roughly around 200,000 or less of difference.
Okay, but all right. So did you consider the expenses that were being reported for the purpose of
No, I went with the model.
Just so it is indeed all model derived, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and Mr. Chair, the cap rate is not in question in this instance, so I will leave my questions there, and I thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Branson, do you have any questions?
I do not, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Valderrama, I did look at the information provided by the applicant in the disclosure, and I note that there is a discrepancy in the NOI, but is there anything that you see in the expenses that you don't agree with?
In my opinion, I think the maintenance and repair line is a little bit on the high side. However, there could be some explanation to it, so I'm not sure. And what else? Let me see here. So far, that's it. And the caretaker is a little bit on the high side as well, but other than that, other than those two lines, I don't see any other lines on the expense side, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. What would be the normal suspected maintenance per suite in a property of this age?
It varies, Mr. Chair. There could be varying opinions from our side to the applicant's side as well. So I don't have any evidence to support to indicate what the average maintenance and repair and maintenance for that matter, Mr. Chair. So that's why I'm deferring to the model expense ratio of 51.05%.
No, I understand that, but you indicated you thought it looked a little high, so I'm wondering what would you expect the annual maintenance per suite to total in a block of this nature?
No, I don't. I have no. I didn't really take a look at it, Mr. Chair. Specific to this property also.
No, I understand, but if you said you thought it was a little high, what would you expect a reasonable rate would be, though?
Just
To
trying
know that
to
it's high,
calculate per.
what you'd expect.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'm just trying to calculate what this one is in terms of per unit. I'm just because it's not that clear. It's kind of, it looks like it's 1,510,588.
Yeah, it sort of looks like that to me too. So if you divide that by the number of suites, I think you'd get. I think I did the calculation. Hang on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just over $2,000 a unit.
Yeah, that's on the high side, Mr. Chair. There are some that are registering between 1,000 to 1,500 out there in the market. So I'm not, but I don't have any samples of that one in this evidence, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And the cap rate at 5.8, it seems to be, again, I'm looking at the city's cap information, it seems to be higher than the 80th percentile. Is this block,
5.8.
this building one that you would say would be in the lower 20% of residential apartment buildings in the city?
Yeah, the 20th to 80th percentile is just the 60% of the parcels that we have on record. And so a 5.8 may be outside of the range. However, there's still 40% that's not within the 20th and 80th percentile, Mr. Chair.
No, I understand that, but I'm
so
saying
this could be on the upper end.
It seems to be that it's for a building of this nature, would you think this building would rank in the bottom 20% of residential apartment buildings in the city of Winnipeg?
It's more than the 80th percentile, Mr. Chair, because the 80th percentile is already at 5.6, so it could be
I'm aware
anywhere
of that.
over that. Yes,
I'm aware of that, Mr. Valderrama, but I'm saying to you, looking at this building, and you're an assessor, would you expect this building to qualify as a building that would be in the bottom 20% of residential apartment buildings located in the city of Winnipeg?
Bottom 20% meaning outside of the 80th percentile, right? On the top.
Yes, you got a cap rate of
Um,
5.8, and you're saying that 80% of the cap rates are between 480 and 560.
5.6.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it would, since I'm also relying on the model when it comes to the cap rate on this one at 5.8%. So it could be, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So what you're saying is if we were to rely on the 5.8, we should also then accept the model rate. We should also accept the model NOI. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, that's completes my questions. Thank you very much. We'll
Thank
get
you.
back to this and okay. So we can proceed to the next one, and so we can now let Ms. Knight back into
Mr. Chair, may I get my presentation?
You know, I'm sorry. You know what? You're absolutely right, Mr. Story. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, that's okay.
Presentation. Apologize. You know, I asked some questions of Mr. Valderrama that I was going to be asking you, so that's what got me off. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I'll be expedient. Thank you. Okay, so our subject property is on the south side of Portage Avenue. It's at the southwest corner of the intersection of Century and Portage. This is St. James Assiniboia. We have two 17-story structures. They're built in 1968. They're presently being used as multifamily residential buildings. They operate as one economic unit. Mr. Chair, you had a good question about the that higher cap rate at 5.8. We would typically be somewhere in that 5.75 range. We've accepted the 5.8, but I presume that having multiple buildings, perhaps the siting of this property it does have a somewhat atypical entrance point, and perhaps the age would give rise to some of that increased risk, so to speak. But in this case, we're not disputing the model cap rate. It seems to fall in line with what we would suggest typically, but we have indeed performed a 3-year stabilization of the actual income and expenses. So if you will, please follow me to page 10. We have looked at the income and expenses as reported from the years 2017 through the year 2020. As I mentioned in my questioning of the assessor, as to why the actual figures weren't used, you can see in our stabilized line, that's line 3 under income, potential market gross rents, that it is indeed a fair bit lower than what the model is suggesting. 3.2% from a vacancy perspective is fine. That would be commensurate of the low end of market. The overall market vacancy in the city of Winnipeg as of the reference date is 3.8% on average. So 3.2 is fine. We do recognize that we pick up some additional income by way of laundry, by way of parking, some commercial and miscellaneous income, and that's been included as well. So that brings us to our effective gross income of $2,750,722, which is still lower than what the model is suggesting at $3,024,319. Now, Mr. Chair, we've looked to these expenses and stabilized them in a way that that makes sense. So when we have a line item where the most relevant year should be applied, for example, insurance, we will use the most relevant year. When we have a year where the expenses fluctuate, we will stabilize them over a 3-year period. That's the goal of our exercise of stabilizing the 3 years of income and expenses into what we will call a typical year. Now, Mr. Chair, you'd asked about if there was anything that would stick out to you here. I will suggest to you that there's nothing out of the norm here. In fact, in some cases, the utilities at 11.1% of EGI might even be on the slightly low side given the age of this property. The R&M has been stabilized to $1,977 per door, which is right in line. That would not give us any pause. In fact, for a building of this age, you might see a figure as high as 2,200 per door, but these are the actuals again, and they are stabilized at $1,977 per door. Ultimately, our expense ratio is calculated at 52.8%, which gives us, or I guess the figure comes first, which is 1,452,970, which relative to the EGI is 52.8%, giving us an NOI of 1,297,752, capitalized at 5.8%, gives us $22,375,041. Of course, we round that to $22,375,375. Now, if you just follow me very, very quickly, please. For properties where we do have, this is picked on page 11, our exercise is to take the repair and maintenance as reported by the owner. We back out the capital expenditures, and we back out the waste and snow. Waste and snow is captured on a separate line item, and that is how we determine our R&M per suite. So in this case, it is indeed 1,977. I will leave my presentation on cap rate for the next file, as it is not in dispute. But ultimately, Mr. Chair, based on the actuals, we do submit respectfully that the value of this property ought not to exceed $22,375,000. And with that, I am open to your questions, and I thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Boardroom, any questions?
I have none for now, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Branson, do you have any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Story, I'm looking at your Alta study, and for a building, it says on it, the little that you published here, I would expect, because of the age and the fact that it's more than 5 stories, it should have a 5.5 cap rate, but you've like the model rate of 5.8 better, correct?
Well, we've accepted it, and I believe it is in line with how both we and the assessor have treated this property in the past. So it is consistent.
Well, no, I mean, what I'm saying is you're taking the model rate of 5.8, which you like, but your own study would show 5.5. Would you agree with that?
I think yes, I think that for this property, we would likely come in at 5.75. We would be comfortable with that. But yes, the study does indicate that you would have we do a site specific analysis of each of these properties. Again, the age is one factor. We do consider there's a sort of an interesting locational access point issue here, and there are 2 buildings, and typically when we have 2 buildings and the model agrees with this, that would be generally tantamount to more risk. So it's not simply a question of picking and choosing, but rather looking at the property on a site specific basis.
Okay, because I look at your page 8, and it does indicate you don't talk about number of buildings, you talk about number of stories. I don't see anything, excuse me, I don't see anything that says number of buildings, and it would indicate a 5.5. So what I'm saying to you here is, if you want to use the specific information that you've got, and you want us to use your NOI, is it fair that we use your NOI, which is lower, and the assessor's cap rate, which is higher? Shouldn't we be consistent? If we're going to use your evidence, shouldn't we use all of it, or else use all the city's evidence?
Well, just very respectfully, Mr. Chair, the first factor that we talk about in factors affecting cap rate is indeed building type and construction. So that's where we talk about, for example, garden apartments. We would add a premium, and I believe we talk about multiple buildings. So I appreciate the question. I understand where you're coming from, but we do consider multiple buildings in our analysis. Now, in terms of the assessor's modeled workup, I would certainly ask that you defer to the actuals. We don't know necessarily how that model algorithmically or other words or otherly generates that assessment. So I guess ultimately my comment would be that I would ask you to defer to the actuals, because we don't really have a sense of how the model generates that income. And as you can see in this case, it is much higher than what is actually being generated.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I know there's a big difference between a garden apartment and these two very large buildings.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a comment. But okay, well, that's completes my question. Thank you very much. And now we then will close this matter and we'll proceed with the next one. So we now then will go to 2300 Portage Avenue. We'll let Ms. Knight back into the hearing.
I'm here. Yeah, she
Okay,
just
good.
let me in.
Good. Oh boy. Okay. Hopefully. Okay. Anytime you're ready, Mr. Balderrama.
I just want to verify 2300 Portage Avenue is the next one. Right, Mr.
Correct.
Chair?
It is, yes.
Okay, next property has a file number of 22-2494. It has a roll number of 07061721000. The property is located at 2300 Portage Avenue. We're dealing with the roll year of 2023. I'm using reference date of April 1st, 2021. The assessed value is $16,289,000. The property is classified as a residential 2 with the liability of taxable. The property is a residential apartment with one building, 7 stories. It has an actual year built of 1955 and an effective year built of 1975. It has 121 suites with 75 indoor parking and 30 outdoor parking. It is zoned as residential multifamily. It has 65,832 square feet of land area, a planned area of 17,717 square feet, a basement area of 16,701 square feet, and a gross floor area of 121,398 square feet. And on page 3 is the aerial photo of the subject property. On page 4 is the income valuation summary. Again, there are 121 units with an average monthly rent per unit of $1,163.23. The gross potential rent for the property is $1,689,010. It has a vacancy rate of 3.2% or $54,048. It has an effective gross income of $1,634,962. It has an expense ratio of 46.2% or $755,352. The net operating income comes down to $879,610. Applying the capitalization rate on the net operating income of around 5.4%, the capitalized income is $16,289,074 or $16,289,000 rounded. On page 5 are some rent comparables. The first one is located at 299 Queen Street. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,159. The second one is located at 234 Ronald Street. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,247. On the third one is located at 130 Strauss Drive. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,408. And the last one is located at 2510 Portage Avenue. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,198. Next page, page 6, is the map of the subject property and comparable rents. On page 7 is the capitalization rate chart. Again, I'll just go through this, Mr. Chair.
You know what? I
Sure.
think that what you did last time, you read all of the information on top about capitalization rates and everything.
Right.
Ms. Knight will be able to read that herself if she wants to. I think we recognize these charts. They're used in every hearing.
Yes,
So I don't think
correct.
besides it any more than just maybe deal with the residential portion of it for our benefit.
I'm sorry, residential portion.
The multifamily,
Oh,
I should say. Yeah.
yes.
Residential
So on page 7, the multifamily range of capitalization rates from 20th to 80th percentile is at 4.8 to 5.6%. And on page 8 are some apartment sales. Would you
Yeah,
want
I
me to
think
go over it,
we-
Mr. Chair, or?
No, I think we recognize these sales. They've been used in
Okay,
every hearing
sure.
as well.
Yes,
So
that's correct.
people are well acquainted with them, Mr. Valderrama. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, and on page 9 is the 2020 income and expense information from pages 9 till 11, and that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Any questions, Mr. Story?
I have a few, Mr. Chair, thank you. Excuse me. Mr. Valderrama, have you ever visited this property?
No, I haven't.
Okay, and your workup on page 4 is all model generated. There's been no overwrites. It's simply the work of the model, correct?
These are all model derived parameters, yes.
Okay, and did you select the rental comps on page 5?
I did.
Okay, now can we agree that just mathematically, if you're not using the same suite count, you're going to have a distortive average monthly rent? Would you agree with me just from a mathematical perspective?
Distorted in terms of what?
Well, okay, can we agree that a 2-bedroom typically rents for more than a 1-bedroom?
Yes.
And a 3-bedroom typically rents for more than a 2-bedroom?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so if you have a higher proportion of 2-bedrooms, then your average rent is going to be higher. And then if you've selected comps that include 3-bedrooms, then your average rent will also be higher. So you're not really comparing apples to apples, correct?
Well, I'm not sure if there is really a perfect comparable, if that's what you're alluding to in terms of the subject property, but
right.
All I did here was I was trying to find some comparables within the vicinity, hopefully. I found some, and I found number of stories. If we look at it, 3 out of the 4 are some high story, or 1 to 7, 0 to 15, and 11 stories high, and then almost similar in effective year built. So that's what I went with this, or that's my thought process in terms of choosing all of these comparables.
Okay, we'll go back to my initial question though. If the suite count is not the same, then mathematically that average is going to be distorted against the subject, is it not?
Well, it distorted in terms of, yes, the number of suites. These are all higher, and if we're going to notice, they're all almost higher except for comparable one.
So would looking at the actuals for the subject not be a better tell of value for our exercise?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that question.
Would it not be more appropriate to look at the actual rents collected, the contract rents collected in the subject property, as opposed to other properties with different suite counts that are just different properties altogether? Would that not make more sense? Would it not make more sense to look at the subject's rents?
I actually picked the model and start and I did not do any changes to it in terms of.
Okay, that's fine. And then comp 4, just so we're clear, just to sort of not to put too fine a point on this, Mr. Chair, but that property is indeed on our docket today, is it not, Mr. Valderrama?
2510 Portage. 20. Yes, it is.
Okay, so I suppose then. Okay, well, I think I've made my point. I'll leave that there. In terms of cap rates, and Mr. Chair, I will do this once. I fully appreciate that the board has heard this many, many times, so I will just be expedient. Mr. Valderrama, 2390 McPhillips, you're aware that that property sold with rents that were below CMHC averages.
The rent is what it is, and that's what they asked for during the time of sale. Yes.
Okay, and can we agree that mathematically, if the rents were increased upon acquisition and all else was held equal, then that cap rate would effectively be higher? Can we agree on that mathematically?
It depends on how you look at it, to be honest. If we're gonna look at it, and if we're gonna keep the cap rate the same at 4.79, the value would be increased. So
No,
that's another side to the coin.
No, Mr. Waldron, the value is what the value is. The purchaser paid $19.4 million for it.
Correct.
We're trying to solve for the cap rate. So what I'm suggesting, or what I'm asking you, is mathematically, if we know the sale price, but we hold the expense ratio constant, if the cash flow, if the rents go up, then does not that cap rate indeed it become higher, it expands, decompresses, correct? Mathematically.
Well, to answer, it's difficult to answer the question directly, Mr. Chair. The purchaser bought the property for 19.4 million, knowing that there is an NOI existing. So I shouldn't say he, but the purchaser bought the property at 19.4 million, knowing, or of course, I mean, with all these NOIs and all these income and expense during the time of sale. So that information is available. So if we're going to use those two parameters, it will boil down to 4.79% as a cap rate. If we're going to go with actuals on this one.
You said that you were aware that the rents at the time of acquisition were below CMHC, correct?
Well, you just asked the question, and it's been being asked ever since. So the actuals, whatever the actuals at that point when it was sold, they were the actuals.
Okay.
So whether they are below or above the CMHC average rents, it's the decision of the owner back then to charge those rents.
Right. Okay. And the purchaser was a national real estate investment trust, correct? So they were an astute purchaser. So they would have been aware, presumably, that there was topside potential on those rents. Would that be a fair comment?
I'm not sure. I didn't see who the purchaser was.
Okay.
So if they know what they're doing, then most likely they know that there is also an upside to the value of that property.
I'm sorry, you're suggesting that you don't know who purchased the property?
It's not here on the evidence, so I cannot say who or what, or so I would be assuming if it's not on my evidence, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I didn't include it.
Okay. So did you review the sale? Did you do any research on this sale?
It was done by a colleague in my department.
That's okay. I'll move on. 700 St. Mary's. Can we agree at a minimum that property was purchased with the intention to renovate? That's why that cap rate is so low.
I don't have that information with regard to that sale, if there is an intention to renovate.
Okay. But it has certainly been brought to your attention in these hearings, correct?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
And 32 Arden, that's a property that initially appeared in the Altus cap rate study, but was struck based on some question about discrepancy between miscellaneous income. Are you aware of that?
I was made aware of that in the past hearings.
Okay. I think I'll leave my comments there, Mr. Chair, regarding cap rate, and I will ask, of course, that those comments and questions carry forward to the balance of our docket, if you will.
Mr. Story.
Thank you. Okay, those are my questions.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Branson, any questions?
Sorry, I had to find the unmute. No, I don't have any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Knight, do you have any questions?
I do. Do you have any interior pictures?
No, I don't.
Has there been any upgrades done or permits pulled on this location?
Just looking at the effective years built, there must have been something done with the building. The actual year built is 1955 and the effective year built is 1975. I just don't have the exact information on what was done or what were done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, obviously, there's Mr. Valderrama, there was quite a bit of work done because it's brought up the effective year to 1975. I think that I agree with Ms. Knight. It would be helpful to have had photographs of some suites to see the nature of the property this time. But anyway, they're not there, so. Let's see what I want to ask you. This property has a cap rate of 5.4%. Would that be based on the effective age, or what other parameters would be used to for the model to arrive at that?
Mr. Chair, it is based on the effective age instead of the actual age. That's one of the factors, aside from the location and the size of the property.
Okay, so it's closer to the 80%, up from certainly up quite a bit from the 20%. Okay. I think that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Story, you can proceed.
Thank you very much. Okay, so 2300 Portage is on the south side of Portage. That's the southwest corner of Mount Royal and Portage. It was indeed built in 1955. There's an effective age variant applied by the city of 1975. We don't disagree with that. There are indeed photos in my brief. You can see that it is maintained. Excuse me. It's presently being used, of course, as a multifamily residential building. Total gross floor area is approximately 134,624 square feet. And the suite mix is such: there's one bachelor suite, 43 one-bedroom suites, and 77 two-bedroom suites, for a total of 121 suites. There are 30 outdoor and 76 indoor parking stalls as reported. The site size is 1.5 acres, and it is indeed zoned RMFL, so large multifamily. There's some photos in my brief here to orient you, to show you the exterior of the property. Once again, we have looked to the actuals to determine an appropriate market rent and vacancy. That's worked up in my workup, and we are indeed applying a cap rate of 5.5%, and that is commensurate with what we'll call that range of that 1975. Now, I will point out, Mr. Chair, that the city does suggest that cap rates in the city run from 3.8 to 7.4%. Brokers are generally telling us, we have to be a little bit careful, but they typically tell us that the cap rates are between 5 and 6%. So I would suggest to you that a cap rate of 5.5% is appropriate in this instance. We're not worlds away, of course, from the assessor, but that is what we've applied. On page 10, we're using the actual rents. You do see some elevation in vacancy, but that is corresponding with rental increases. You do also, however, see some consideration of bad debt and collection loss. So I've included both and factored both in. However, I have also included the laundry income, the parking income. There is a sort of an antenna on the roof where there's some license, there's some income generated by that rooftop license, and then the miscellaneous income. So that's all been captured as well. Once again, we stabilize our expenses into what we'll call a most typical year. In this instance, the actual stabilized R&M is 1,337 per door, slightly low. In the previous cycle, I have a note here, it was 1,314. So we do this every cycle. We look at the R&M that is being reported in the income and expense statements. We stabilize it, and then we present that to the board. Again, you can see on page 11, this is the repair and maintenance study for this specific property. Again, we've looked as far back as 2015 on our horizon here, but effectively most of the numbers flow from 16 through 20, giving you a 5-year average, and then stabilized by removing CapEx and waste and snow. And you can see indeed the R&M per door is 1,337. Okay, so with those, or I should very quickly, I'll just show you just once here on page 16. You can see this is the income and expenses that are submitted to the board, to the city by the owner, and our comments are in red. This is how we break out the R&M. So we do indeed look at the properties on a site-specific basis and determine how we ought best to stabilize their income and expenses. So that's all been provided to you. There's some comments about photos. So starting on page 26 of my brief, you can see the exterior from Portage Avenue. I was there, well, let's see, this past Saturday. So I can tell you that this is indeed a good representation of the exterior of this property. And then I also have current marketing photos that show you the indoor spaces. So you can see they're, typical, what we'll call middle of the road type apartments on Portage Avenue. They're well maintained. You can see the suite orientation on page 28 is a little more like the older style. And I did note on page 29 there's some parquet flooring. So that's maybe that's from the 70s, or maybe that's in style again. I'm not sure, but they certainly look to be in reasonable shape. And we've not made any adjustment or condition or anything of the sort. So when we use the actual income and expenses, when we use a cap rate that goes right down the middle of the line, we do come to a value of $13,788,000. So I do respectfully submit that the value of this property at the reference date, based on our site-specific analysis, not exceed $13,788,000. With that, I'll welcome your questions.
Mr. Boardroom, any questions?
I have none, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Branson, do you have any questions?
I don't, thank you.
Mr. Knight, Ms. Knight, do you have any questions?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just looking at the financials that you're using in your stabilization. Hang on, I got to go back to it now. I'm rotating, okay. Okay, so I'm first of all looking at the vacancies.
Yes.
And you show that the vacancies basically have been going up.
Yes.
An average of 5%, but you stabilize at 6.3%.
6.3 being the most current year. Yes, and that's a great question. And that's because the vacancy is indeed relative to the rental increase. So we don't use the average rent. We use the rent in the most current year, and the corresponding vacancy is what we've applied here. I did use a slightly lower collection loss, to be fair, but yes, you're absolutely correct, sir. I used the 2020 actual vacancy as it is, commensurate with the rents that you can see are a fair bit higher than 2019. And every time the rent goes up between 17, 18, 19, and 20, that vacancy also follows. So that is the reasoning for that.
Okay, because normally I think it would be fair to use the stabilized vacancy rate.
Sure, at 5%, yeah, that's fair. Although we do see that this is a bit of this does give us some pause when we see that every time the rents go up, the vacancy is going up. That would show us that there is some tension between what the market is willing to bear and what they're able to charge. But I appreciate your comment. I think that's if it's 5 or 6.3, that either way, it should be elevated certainly above 3.2. And certainly above the city average of 3.8 in this specific instance.
Okay, I'm next taking you to management, Mr. Story.
I'm sorry.
I see the management average is 45,957, and it was never higher than 47,000. And you're using a rate of 73,917. Is that a mistake, or how did you get that number?
I'm sorry, there was a bit of a clip there on the. You're asking me on the.
Management.
Oh, management is 5% of EGI. That's a market parameter that we've always used. That's an actual market figure. It's always 5%. Okay,
because I'm looking and I see that your management was at the highest 47,000. You've stabilized at 45,957, And then
Yes.
notwithstanding that, you're using a management fee of 73,917.
Yeah, and sometimes there are efficiencies, so perhaps they have a manager that's managing a number of properties in the area. I'm not sure, but typically it has not been disputed that 5% of the EGI is the market standard for the management fee.
I understand, but you don't want us to use the model. We shouldn't, if we're using actuals, shouldn't we be using actuals? You're asking us to use actuals when it's convenient for you, and to use the normal market when it favors you. Is that fair?
Well, no, that's not fair, because okay, so we're looking at a fee simple perspective of this property, and I will suggest to you that if another purchaser purchased this property, the way that they would stabilize this expense would be they would look at a 5% management fee. I will have to look into why that is low, but no, 5% is a typical management fee in the market. So I accept your question, but I think that it is appropriate to use 5% of EGI as a management fee. But I do appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah, but you're showing in 2020, the actual managed fee was only 46,230. So wouldn't a person buying the property look at the management fee at that? That's the expenses that they're showing. You're asking us to use actuals instead of the model, but you're then taking figures that you think are appropriate for you when they're in your favor and asking us to use them.
Well, no, we're not simply, we're consistent with virtually every submission that we bring before the board. We use 5% as a management fee. And again, just because that is typical of market. Now, the fact that in this instance, it is lower, I can't say for certain, but again, I do know of situations where there are properties that are managed, where there are, again, efficiencies where a company has somebody who's managing maybe 2 properties or 3 properties or whatever the case may be, and they might break it out separately. But so I don't know in this case, but I do believe that using 5% is typical. It's what we've always done, and it's not simply picking and choosing in this case. It is part of our stabilization process for all multifamily that we bring before the board.
Okay, so Mr. Story, I'm not sure I'm satisfied with your answer, but anyway, did you prepare this work, or is it somebody else's work and you're just defending it right now?
No, I'm sorry,
Did you prepare the stabilization record, or is it somebody else's work?
Well, our office, I don't recall exactly which one I did. Our entire office prepares hundreds and hundreds of apartments well before this, so I'm not exactly sure.
Okay, so let's look at repair and maintenance.
Yeah.
And again, you show a repair and maintenance that's actually been going down. It was 155,972, and then 121,592, and then 131,599. You stabilized it at 136,388. But you're using the repair and management or maintenance, I mean, of 161,725. Where did that come from?
Right. Okay. So on page 11, and this is supported by the income statements. So you can see every line item going back to 2016. So we have, you can see extraordinary repairs, roof, hot water tank, and other. That's CapEx. We don't include that. Waste and snow is backed out. So we take the figures from flooring replacement, appliance replacement, painting, counters, cupboards, and cabinetry, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, elevator, fire, pest control, building, exterior, grounds, and then the balance. And that is how that's how we stabilize that figure. So the figures that you're seeing those are unstabilized, right? So that's why that stabilized figure is higher than the individual line items leading up to the stabilized column.
Usually when I see these statements, they usually show a stabilization. The stabilized amount is usually the one that's used, not a much higher figure than any of the repair and maintenance in any years prior to get to that. So that's where I'm questioning it.
Well, again, it's all here in the brief, starting on page in the appendix. So starting on page 16, you can see exactly how each line item that was used to determine that table. And again, 1337 per door is actually quite low for this property, but that's how we determine that number. That is indeed the stabilized R&M for this property.
Okay, well, anyway, bear with me. You agree that both those higher amounts have reduced the NOI, correct?
What do you mean by both of those higher
Your
amounts?
NOI, your net operating income has been reduced because you have those higher amounts that I just referred to. Yeah.
Well,
okay.
I mean, yes, they would be high. Yeah, it would be different if those numbers were lower, to be certain.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, that completes my questions. We'll then proceed with our next property. Mr. Valderrama, we are prepared now to go on with the property at 2440 Portage Avenue.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. The next property has a file number of 2584. It has a roll number of 07075359200. The property is located at 2440 Portage Avenue. We're dealing with the roll year of 2023 using reference date of April 1st, 2021. The assessed value is $21,096,000. The property is a residential 2 with the liability of taxable. The property is a residential apartment with 1 building and 5 stories. It has an actual and effective year built of 1962. It has 171 suites with 122 indoor parking and 66 outdoor parking. It is zoned as a residential multi-family. It has a land area of 117,279 square feet, a planned area of 32,924 square feet, and a gross floor area of 164,620 square feet. On page 3 is the aerial photo of the subject property. Page 4 is the income valuation summary. There are 171 units with an average monthly rent per unit of $1,165.79. The gross potential rent is $2,392,201. It has a vacancy rate of 3.2% or $76,550. It has an effective gross income of $2,315,651. It has an expense ratio of 47.16%, excuse me, or $1,092,061. The net operating income comes down to $1,223,590. Applying the capitalization rate of 5.8% to the net operating income, the capitalized income is $21,096,379, or $21,096,000 rounded. On next page, page 5, are some rent comparables. First one is located at 262 Hamilton Avenue. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,166. On the next one is located at 1710 Portage Avenue. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,116. On the next comparable, it is located at 2300 Portage Avenue. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,154. And on page 4, the fourth comparable, I should say, is located at 234 Ronald Street. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,247. Next page, page 6 is the map of the subject property and comparable rents. Page 7 is the capitalization rate chart. On page 8 is the capitalization rate evidence. Beginning of page 9, going till page 13 is the income and expense information for the subject property for 2020. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Story, any questions?
I have a few questions. Yes, thank you. Mr. Valderrama, this is all simply modeled, correct?
Yes, these are all model derived parameters.
Can you give us a sense of how the expense ratio is derived for this property by the model?
I'm not sure how model determines it, but it's a model derived parameter.
Okay, and then just very quickly, page 5, comps 2 and 3, those are also on our docket today.
I believe so.
Okay, but so we're not using those rents for the, when those rents are in subject, we don't use their actual rents to determine their value, but we try to determine the value of another property using their rents. Is that correct?
The actuals are used to determine to see where the model is in terms of its average monthly rent per unit. So I go with the model for every property.
Okay, all right. Okay, that's fine. And okay, and my questions cap rate will carry forward. Okay, thank you, Mr. Waldron.
Thank
Those are
you.
my questions.
Thank you. Ms. Branson, do you have any questions?
I don't. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Knight, do you have any questions?
Again, any indoor pictures?
I don't have any indoor pictures, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Balderrama, in this case, I'm looking at your rent comparables. And all of the rent comparables are for properties that are somewhat newer than the subject, correct?
A few years, yes. They're newer, yes.
And in most instances, the number of square feet in the comparables is higher. Would you agree with that?
Which number, Mr. Chair?
I'm saying that, well, okay, your comparables 2, 3, and 4 all have higher areas than the subject on the average
floor.
Higher average, yeah, gross floor area.
1, 2, and 3, yes. They have.
Okay, so you probably would expect higher rents in most of the comparables because of that.
Well, just the mix also might come into play on that one, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
The bedroom mix, I should say.
Okay. Okay, that completes my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, you can go ahead now with your evidence, Mr. Story.
Okay, so we're at 2440 Portage Avenue. Excuse me, this is the corner of Portage and Assiniboine Crescent. It is a 5-story structure built in 1962. It is being used as multifamily residential. Gross floor area is approximately 164,620 square feet. And it does have 11 bachelor suites, 21 one-bedrooms, and 138 two-bedroom suites. So there's no issue with the, or I'm sorry, and 1 3-bedroom suite as well, for a total of 171 suites. So we don't have an issue with the suite mix or count. There are 122 indoor and 66 outdoor parking stalls. It is 2.7 acres. It is zoned RMFM, so it's multifamily medium. Again, we've looked to the actual income and expenses. Now, Mr. Chair, I will make an adjustment. That 5.8, I think when we look at the actuals based on some of our discussions here, I think you might be quite right that a 5.5 would make more sense in this context, especially since the expenses are relatively high. I don't want to distort the value, so I'm going to make a correction to my brief and suggest that the value be the cap rate be 5.5. Now, in terms of the actual market rents, we look to the income and expenses. So they are recording $2,265,142 as of 2020. You can see the vacancy from 2017 to the reference date runs from a low of 1.7 to 4.2. So the 3.2 is accepted. Again, it is slightly below the city of Winnipeg average, and we do have a touch of collection loss in this property, but ultimately 3.2 is accepted. Again, we capture the laundry, parking, and miscellaneous income. And you can see here, Mr. Chair, as I had mentioned, that 5%, if you look just mathematically, it's interesting at 5%, that 111,481 is indeed, it does agree with the recording in 2020. It's off by $2, but it's effectively the same figure. So that is indeed 5% of the EGI. The utilities are reasonably high in this property at 17.2% of EGI, but those are the actuals, and we have applied them. So in the most current year. So ultimately, our expenses are 1,339,611, which are indeed high. And that gives us a net operating income of 890,007. Again, I'm changing that cap rate to 5.5% so that we're not to be seen as simply picking the higher rate, which then indicates a market value of 16,182,000. And again, that's based on the NOI of 890,007, capitalized at 5.5%. And you can see if you go through the years 2018, 19, and 20, that NOI does indeed run from 827, 868, 821. So it's certainly not 1.2 million. Okay, the R&M breakdown has been provided for you once again. R&M per suite in this building is 2,176 per door. So slightly higher, I think, than one of the other properties we looked at today, but that is indeed the figure, and that is how we've stabilized it. Now, in terms of the interiors, I believe we have some marketing photos. Well, we have some exteriors on 27, and yeah, no, we don't have interiors. Didn't have marketing photos, and I didn't have a chance to visit the interior. I did drive by it, and you can see the exterior. That's Birchwood Terrace, and it does have a pool. So ultimately, that's my submission, and we do respectfully submit that the value not exceed 16,182,000, and I thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Boardroom, any questions?
I have none, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Ms. Branson, do you have any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Knight, do you have any questions?
So just to confirm, you reduced the cap rate to 5.5 for a total of 16,182,000, correct?
Presuming that the actuals are used in the decision, then yes, I'm very comfortable with 5.5. Given the yes,
okay.
Precise.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, let's take a look here. Okay, so I'm looking at the vacancies on your stabilization.
Yes.
And they show they've been going down, actually. They were 4.2 in 2018, but they went down to 1.7 and 2.8, and they stabilized at 2.9. But you're adhering to the 3.2, which is the, again, you want us to use your rates when it benefits you, but you're using the city's model vacancy rates.
The vacancy and collection loss in 2020 is 3.2%. It's 2.8 vacancy and 0.4% bad debt. So it is indeed 3.2%.
Okay, so you had the bad debt in there. Okay, I see we did it. Okay. Thank you for clearing that up for me. I missed that.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I also thank you for amending your cap rate. I think it gives you more credibility, Mr. Story. So appreciate that. And I have no further questions to ask.
Thank you very much.
So we'll now go on to 2510 Portage Avenue. Mr. Boardroom, when you're ready?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next property is a file number of 22-3422. It has a roll number of 07075473000. The property is located at 2510 Portage Avenue. We're dealing with the roll year of 2023 using reference date of April 1st, 2021. The assessed value is $24,796,000. The property is classified as a residential 2 with a liability of taxable. The property is a residential apartment with 2 buildings, 1 to 7 stories. It has an actual year built of 1963, and it has an effective years of 1963 and 1988. There are 165 suites with 132 indoor parking and 25 outdoor parking. It is zoned as residential multifamily. It has a land area of 114,648 square feet, a planned area of 73,238 square feet, and a gross floor area of 159,138 square feet. On page 3 is the photo of the subject property. And on page 4, next page, is the income valuation summary. There are 165 total units with an average monthly rent per unit of $1,241.46. It has a gross potential rent of $2,458,091, has a vacancy rate of 3.2% or $78,659. It has an effective gross income of $2,379,432. It has an expense ratio of 45.29%, or $1,077,645. The net operating income comes down to $1,301,787. Applying the capitalization rate of 5.25% on the net operating income, the capitalized income is $24,795,943, or $24,796,000 rounded. Next page, page 5, are some rent comparables. The first one is located at 130 Strauss Drive. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,408. Second one is located at 234 Ronald Street. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,247. The third one is located at 2425 Portage Avenue. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,233. The last one is located at 200 Ronald Street. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,206. The next page has the map of the subject property and comparable rents. On page 7 is the capitalization rate chart. On page 8 is the capitalization rate evidence. And on page 9 is the income and expense information of the subject property. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Story, any questions?
Just a couple, well, you know what, I was actually by this property and I don't disagree with the cap rate anymore. So we're just talking now about income and expenses. So Mr. Valderrama, is it fair to say that this, like the other properties, this is all model derived, correct?
On page 4, yes, these are all model parameters.
Okay, I think I'll leave it there, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Branson, any questions?
No question, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Knight, any questions?
Again, any pictures of the interior?
I don't have any pictures of the interior, ma'am.
Any reasoning why it was 1963 to 1988 then?
I'm not sure, but it looks like probably something was done. So I'm not sure based on the exterior photos of the subject property.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, you know, the question that Ms. Knight just asked you, I was going to ask as well, because we don't know what portion is 1988 and what portion would be 1963 effective, and that would affect the cap rate, although Mr. Story has indicated he's not disputing the cap rate, so I guess it's not an issue. But ordinarily, it'd be nice to have pictures, and especially in situations like that, so we'd be able to form some kind of opinion on the condition. Now, I guess the cap rate, though, chosen by the model, do you know how it determined? Well, it's not an issue. I'm not going to ask the question now. Okay, thank you. I have no
Thank
further
you.
questions. Mr. Story, you can proceed.
Oh, thank you. Excuse me, sir. Okay, so again, this property is on the south side of Portage. It's at the southwest corner of Olive and Portage. This would be considered Birchwood. And Birchwood is, of course, a neighborhood in St. James. Excuse me. So we have a 7-story structure built in 63. The assessor or the assessment department is suggesting an effective age of 1988. Presumably there was work done that has advanced extended the useful economic life by 25 years. I have photos of the interior, and since evidence, I have had the chance to view the exterior of the property, and I think that that is fair. So again, we had come in with a 5.5 cap. Excuse me, but I am going to suggest that 5.25 is appropriate in this case, as it is in good condition, to be certain. So again, we've looked to the actual income and expenses. I've provided that to you on page 10. Now, you'll see here, Mr. Chair, the vacancy. Now, just so I'm very clear about our methodology, we try to apply a market vacancy that would be stabilized over the effective useful life of the asset. We do recognize that 3.8 is the actual city vacancy. 3.2 in this neighborhood, there's lower vacancy. There's a great deal of supply, but there's not a high vacancy. But we do see that in 2020, the actual vacancy is 3.3%, and bad debts and collection loss are 0.6%. However, we have used 3.2, so we don't simply use the most beneficial number. We're trying to use a number that makes sense over the useful life of the asset. We've included laundry and parking income. Now, all of this to say that our effective gross income in this instance is indeed higher than the model when we use the actuals. So the model is suggesting 2,379,432, and we are suggesting that the actuals would indicate 2,420,118. I've included the stabilized expenses yet again. Again, management calculates at 121. It is recorded at 127. The utilities are well in line at 10.7. They're actually fairly low. But this is interesting. The R&M is showing us 2,437 per door. Now, I will suggest to you that if you spend more money on the property, you can typically command a higher rent. So there will be a relative function between the rents that you are able to charge and the amount you spend per suite or per door. So in this case, it is indeed 2,437 per door, and we've broken that down on the next page. Again, at a 5.25 cap, we come in at a value of 23,197,000. I'm very comfortable with that number given further review of the property. Now, page 11 shows you that R&M breakout once again. Again, site specific. We've analyzed 5 years, stabilized this out, and I will suggest to you that higher R&M likely helps command a higher rent on our top line. So ultimately, that's my presentation. The value we're seeking is 23,197,000. In terms of the interiors, now be very careful. These are marketing photos. They're great. They're staged. This is on page 19, but you can see that the property is in good shape, and there's no issue there. You can see the exterior. You can see the interior. They're clearly well maintained. No issues with condition whatsoever. So that is my presentation, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions, Mr. Valderrama?
I have none, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Branson, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Knight, any questions?
I do not, thank you.
And I don't either. So thank you very much, everybody. Can we take 5 minutes of this time?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Okay, we're to resume our hearing, and we're now on docket number 5, 3033 Portage Avenue. And Mr. Valderrama, you can Commence your evidence when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next property has a file number of 22-1951. It has a roll number of 07438263000. The property is located at 3033 Portage Avenue. We're dealing with the roll year of 2023 using reference date of April 1st, 2021. The assessed value for the property is $13,218,000. Property is classified as a residential 2 with a liability of taxable. The property is a residential apartment with one building, 13 stories. It has an actual and effective year built of 1988. It has 116 suites with 70 outdoor parking. The property is zoned as commercial corridor with a land area of 58,857 square feet, a planned area of 8,517 square feet, and a gross floor area of 103,226 square feet. On page 3 is the aerial photo of the subject property. And on page 4 is the income valuation summary. Again, there are 116 total units with an average monthly rent per unit of $958.23. The gross potential rent is $1,333,856. It has a vacancy rate of 3.2%, or vacancy in terms of dollars of 42,683. The effective gross income is $1,291,173. There's an expense ratio of 47.79%, or $617,052. The total net operating income comes down to $674,121. Applying the capitalization rate of 5.1% on the net operating income, the capitalized income is $13,218,059, or $13,218,000 rounded. On the next page are some rent comparables. The first one is located at 262 Hamilton Avenue. There's an average monthly rent per unit of $1,166. Second one is located at 175 Greenway Crescent West. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,013. The third one is located at 234 Ronald Street. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,247. And the last one is located at 505 Rouge Road. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,000. On next page, page 6 is the map of the subject property and comparable rents. On page 7 is the capitalization rate chart. On page 8 is the capitalization rate evidence. Beginning of page 9 up to page 16 is the 2020 income and expense information of the subject property. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Any questions, Mr. Story?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Valderrama, can we agree that this is a, let's call it an assisted living facility?
I wasn't able to inspect the property, so I wouldn't agree nor disagree with that question, Mr. Chair. So
Can we see very clearly on the first page, the owner is a retirement group? Is that fair?
the ownership, yes, it is a retirement group. However, not sure they can deal with a lot of things, so I don't want to assume anything.
Okay, starting on your page 9, though, this income statement, this would not be typical of an apartment, would it? Just based on what they're detailing to you here?
Yes, there are some charges in there.
So it's more like a
typical of an apartment
statement, doesn't it? Something like that.
Something what? I'm sorry, you got cut off.
This looks more like the statement that a hotel would submit typically, would it not?
I'm not familiar with the hotel income statement, so but I would I would say that this is not a typical apartment.
And does the
Income
model,
statement.
recognize that it's a purpose-built property? That it's not a typical market apartment?
I am not sure if this was treated differently than an apartment block.
And are you aware that there's no direct access to this site? You have to drive over another person's property in order to access this site. Are you aware of that?
Just looking at the aerial photo that I have on my evidence on page 3. Not sure if that belongs to. It's not quite clear though. Their entrance.
Okay. Well,
I'm
okay.
not. It's not quite clear for on my photo, so I'm not sure.
And if say you haven't visited it, or has it been
No.
visited by anybody from the department to corroborate what I'm saying here? Is anyone aware that this property has no direct access?
Personally, I haven't. I'm not sure if my colleagues in the department have already visited this.
Okay. Can we agree though that if it is indeed what we'll call a retirement home, that those properties are built with, let's say, amenities that are tailored to their to the folks who live there? Their seniors places have large amount. Would you agree that they have large amount of common areas, sitting rooms, dining areas, amenities that are not typical of market apartments? Would you agree with me on that?
Without really inspecting it, I wouldn't be able to agree or disagree with your question.
Oh, okay, but okay, so you, okay, that's fine. So on page 5 though, if I look at your gross floor area per unit, it's suggesting 890 square feet per unit. Now, is that figure simply calculated by taking the gross floor area and dividing it by 116, which is indeed the total number of units?
Looks like it is, yes.
Okay, so then that number would be erroneous in that it's capturing any common area, and it's suggesting that it's part of the suite size, correct?
Well, it is gross floor area, so in terms of erroneous, it has just a different methodology on calculating a floor area per unit, but strictly on a per unit basis, it could be lower than that.
Okay, so I think that answers my question. Then my issue here is only going to be based on cap rate. Now, can we just very quickly, just to go back to your cap rates, I forgot to ask you, do you have anything in direct evidence that shows the calculations as to how you arrived at these cap rates?
None.
Okay, and can we agree that in the city's valuation of income producing properties manual, that it does indeed suggest that the wider swath of cap rates in the city of Winnipeg run from 3.8 to 7.4?
I don't have that in my evidence, so I wouldn't be able to speak to it. If it's in your rebuttal or in your evidence, then you can just.
No, it's a
present it.
city document, but okay, that's fine. Would you agree with me though that purpose-built buildings, if we're looking at them from a market perspective, this property, in order to become a market apartment, would require a great deal of reconfiguring, redemising in order to bring it to what we'll call a market standard as opposed to a assisted living or retirement home. Is that fair?
I cannot answer the question because whatever the market is gonna do to that, I'm not sure. It's more of like hypothetical for me.
One last question. I notice here that the suite mix is very poor. It's all 1-bedroom suites. That's not typical of market. Does the model consider that in any way, shape, or form?
I believe it does. These average monthly rent per unit, or the rent per unit that's model derived, is based on the whatever is submitted to us from different owners and property managers.
Okay, does a negative sweet mix affect the cap rate in the model?
I am not sure.
Okay, Mr. Chair, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Branson, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Knight, any questions?
Again, any indoor pictures to show us that this is an assisted living place?
I
Not
don't
an
have any.
assisted living place? Other
I don't
than the
have any.
financials?
Sorry, I don't have any
Okay.
pictures.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Valderrama, is it normal for the city to evaluate retirement assisted living homes on a multifamily model?
As of yes, as of right now, yes, it is being evaluated based on an apartment.
Okay, and that's the way the city does all retirement assisted living homes?
I believe so, sir.
Okay. Can you clarify in any way how the cap rate was determined by the model?
Aside from the location, size, and age, I am not sure of the others, how it affects the model derived capitalization rate, or how much influence the other parameters aside from the ones I mentioned.
Okay. This property has 116 units and only 70 parking spots. Would that have any bearing on the cap rate?
Again, as I've mentioned earlier, aside from the three factors that I've mentioned, I'm not sure if how much it is being influenced by these other factors, such as the outdoor parking mix compared to, or ratio in terms of the number of suites that the building has.
Okay. Now it indicates also that it was constructed and has an effective age of 1988. In 1988, were there city requirements that required a specific number of parking spaces per unit being built?
I am not aware, or I have no information on that one, Mr. Chair.
Okay, you don't know that. Okay. Okay, well, that concludes my questions. Thank you. Okay,
Thank you.
Mr. Story, you can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be brief. Again, this is a assisted living center. You are the assessor is correct. We typically see that these properties are indeed we consider them from a fee simple perspective as the built property, but PCHs, for example, would be done on the cost approach. But these types of properties are indeed done on income. So again, as I've mentioned, we have this property at the it's in the Sturgeon Creek neighborhood. It's 13 stories. It's the north side of Portage. It does not have direct access. I've been here a number of times. I handled this property in the last cycle. You have to drive through a well, it's call it a medical strip mall in order to gain access to the site. Further to that, and just so you can just humor me for a moment, on page 4, you can see that that red teardrop. That's where our building is. And if you look at the boundaries of this property, this would be extremely irregular. That would be objectively an extremely irregular site. You quite rightly pointed out that we have a poor parking ratio. That is true. I will also point out that we have a very poor suite mix. Now, we have only 1 bedrooms, ultimately, well, we have 1 2-bedroom, but ultimately we have a vast preponderance of 1-bedroom suites. Clearly, and this is just to harken back to something we mentioned earlier, 1-bedroom suites obviously tend to rent for lower than a 2-bedroom suite, or certainly than a 3-bedroom suite. So having a poor suite mix will affect the income producing capacity of the property going forward and should affect the cap rate. We have a great deal of space in this property that is not typical of a market apartment. I have photos in my brief. I'll get to them in a moment. It is in great shape. There's no issue with condition. The property is in excellent condition. However, it would be considered super adequate. So if somebody were to purchase this property, We have the issue of having a great deal of common area that would not be considered typical of the market's appetite in the multifamily universe. We have a preponderance of one-bedroom units, and then we also have very small suites. They're typically 580 or 600 square feet. These are geared towards call it single occupants. It's a very, very specific purpose-built building, and that is what is leading to our cap rate conclusion. We are applying 6%. Now, we've agreed with the potential market rents. We think those are generally okay. We've applied 3.8% vacancy. I've mentioned a number of times today that the citywide vacancy rate is 3.8%. I've provided actual vacancy for what it's worth from the years 2012 through 2020. It is higher, but I'm careful not to conflate those two things because that does relate to the let's call it the going concern of the business of what goes on. But ultimately, given the poor suite mix, I think the 3.8 or just deferring to the city average at the reference date is appropriate. It's not worlds apart, but that is how we've worked it out. Now, in terms of the expenses, the actual expenses in this property would be very, very difficult, if not impossible, to separate from the going concern value of the business. So we do believe that 47.8% may be low. However, we've captured all of the risk, in my mind, in the cap rate. I will point out that there's a separate study. If you were to look at the going concern value of the business and the real estate and capitalize it, Cushman has a study that would suggest a cap rate in the range of, say, 7 to 8% or something like that. So ultimately, if the wider swath of cap rates in the city of Winnipeg run from 3.8 to 7.4, and if we have a property that has a very low parking ratio, that has a very poor suite mix, that has super adequacies or functional obsolescences, and that has this access problem, then ultimately that 6% cap rate is supported from a number of levels, I would suggest to you. So we will respectfully submit the value of this property from a fee simple perspective, from a market perspective, not exceed 11,163,574, which then we round to 11,164. In terms of the and Mr. Chair, you're quite right. The building is 35 years old. There's been no change calculated or observed to the effective age. Now, if you follow me, please, to page 19. This is from A&O. That's Agent Opportunity. That is the database that provides the information for programs and services for older adults. You can see that the one bedrooms are 580 square feet. There's one 1,200 square foot two bedroom, but there's only one of them. So again, the one bedrooms are 580 square feet. And you can see here very quickly that they do things in this property like, you know, bingo, birthday parties, carpet bowling, Bible study, that type of thing that you can imagine. Type of goings on commensurate with this type of very specific property. I've included, starting on page 20, the layouts. That's what they call, and this is current, one bedroom A. You can see that's 560 square feet. That's very small. One bedroom B, 600 square feet. Then they have mobility suite and the two bedroom B. Now you can see on page 24, these are marketing photos. You can see this large dining room. Again, the statements resemble those of a hotel, quite frankly. They serve 3 meals a day here, and it is built in that, to that standard. Now, we are not suggesting that there is an issue with quality whatsoever. We're suggesting that this property, from a market perspective, is purpose-built, and to change its use would be perhaps cost prohibitive. So if the exercise is indeed to look at it from a market perspective, that 6% makes sense to us. There are other photos here. They have a hair salon, a billiards room, and a number of sitting rooms. Oh, and also, just not to belabor this, but on page 28 of my brief, you can see that is indeed the that's how you enter that site. You have to drive over the the neighbor's property. It's next to that Daily Grind coffee shop, and then you drive through through this parking lot to sort of it's not a gate, but to two sort of markers that suggest you're now on private property. So with all of those factors taken into consideration, I do suggest that a 6% cap rate is appropriate. 5.1 is, I don't quite understand how the model is viewing this property, but from a site specific view, we are suggesting a value of 11,164,000. And I'm happy to take your questions, and I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boardroom. Any questions?
I have none, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Branston, do you have any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Knight, do you have any questions?
I do not, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Strang, thank you for all the photos. I think they're helpful. Now, it's really difficult to evaluate this on a basis of an apartment building. I agree, because it's really a business. But and I note that the units are small, but in this case, the residents don't need large kitchens because they eat their meals in a central dining room. Is that not correct?
That's precisely correct. Yeah, it's purpose built for those folks. But that's precisely our issue, Mr. Chair. We have to now try and figure out how the market would view it. But yes, it's purpose built for this use.
Yeah, and that's our difficulty. We have to figure that out. But the photographs do help. Now, so basically, though, in their rent, they're also paying for the use of the dining room and the other, recreational areas of the facility. Would you not agree?
Oh, absolutely. No, their actual rents would include activities, would include access to healthcare professionals visiting the site, would include laundry once a week and 3 meals a day. So the actual rents that would be generated here would be very, very high, but then the expenses would be very, very high. So that's why I've mentioned a couple times that with my experience doing hotels, that is sort of what those expenses look like. But that's not what we're doing. We're not valuing the going concern of the business. We're looking at a market rent. We're accepting the assessor's market rent. It appears to be commensurate with CMHC. We're suggesting that maybe those expenses are low, but there's no way to tell, quite frankly, because it's all quite theoretical. So what we've elected to do, given a number of these challenges, is to put the risk into the cap rate, which is why it may seem high, but ultimately, because it is such a theoretical exercise, let's say, we think that 6% is okay. But yes, the actual rents of the business are very high. Yeah.
Okay. Have you checked the titles of these properties to determine what form of caveats may be registered against them?
No, that's a great question. I didn't have a chance to, but I would assume that there is some sort of dominant easement or agreement between the other owner, but I cannot confirm that. But I can certainly confirm that you cannot reach this site without driving over the other owner's property.
But you're not suggesting they don't have a legal right to enter over them?
Not making any claim to that whatsoever. Nope.
That would run with the property. Yeah,
I'm not sure. I just know that you cannot access it directly.
Well, they either have a legal easement, because I don't think the city would give them a building permit without it, or they by now would have a restrictive right of easement because the property is more than 21 years of age and they've been using this for that period. So at common law, they'd have an easement, even if there wasn't a registered one.
Right. Yeah. No, I would presume there would be an easement there.
Yeah. Okay. I think that completes my questions. Thank you. Okay, so now we can proceed with our very last property, and that is the property at 3563 Portage Avenue. And when you're ready, Mr. Boardroom, you can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next property has a file number of 22-1980. It has a roll number of 07219420000. The property is located at 3563 Portage Avenue. We're dealing with the roll year of 2023, using reference date of April 1st, 2021. The assessed value is $14,416,000. The classification is a residential 2 with a liability of taxable. The property is a residential apartment with 2 buildings at 3 stories. It has an actual and effective year built of 1986. It has 111 suites with 111 outdoor parking. It is zoned as a residential multifamily with a land area of 129,713 square feet, a planned area of 36,049 square feet, and a gross floor area of 104,579 square feet. On page 3 is the aerial photo of the subject property. And on page 4 is the income valuation summary. Again, there are 111 total units with an average monthly rent per unit of $1,081.62. The gross potential rent is $1,440,718. Has a vacancy rate of 3.2% or $46,103. It has an effective gross income of $1,394,615. Has an expense ratio of 47.28% or $659,374. The net operating income comes down to $735,241. Applying the capitalization rate of 5.1% to the net operating income, the capitalized income is $14,416,490 or $14,416,000 rounded. On page 5 are some rent comparables. The first one is located at 2235 Portage Avenue. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,057. The second one is located at 2300 Portage Avenue. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,154. The third one is located at 2510 Portage Avenue. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,198. And the last one is located at 299 Queen Street. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,159. Next page is where the map of the subject property and comparable rents. On page 7 is the capitalization rate chart. On page 8 is the capitalization rate evidence. And pages 9 and 10 is the total or the 2020 income and expense information for the subject property. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Any questions, Mr. Story?
Yeah, just a few, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Mr. Boardroom, this is would you call this a garden style or a garden type apartment?
Just basing it on the picture, I'm not sure if I would consider it that.
Okay, but at a minimum, can we agree that it's wood frame construction? There's multiple buildings on site.
Wood frame, it has a construction class of wood or steel framed exterior walls.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if it is really a wood or a steel frame. So it's either or.
Okay. And it's in Crestview, correct?
Crestview, that's almost towards the West Portage area.
Right, but so in this section, Crestview is the section north of Portage and Westwood is the section south of Portage, correct?
Westview, Crestview, yep, yes, that's correct.
Oh, okay, and on page 5, again, you've got two of our other subjects here today, but we can agree, I think, those are superior buildings to our subject. Is that fair to say?
Which ones?
2300 and 2510 in your rent comps.
Superior in terms of what? I don't
Finish, quality, rental, the ability to generate rent. It would be superior.
They have higher average monthly rent per unit. Yes, that's I would agree with that.
Okay, and all right, just very quickly. Now this is all again model derived, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you've included the income and expense info, but have you considered it in your analysis?
I reviewed it and I still consider the model parameters.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I think those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Ms. Branson?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Knight, do you have any questions?
Just again, any pictures of the inside? Major work been done to change the date of this property?
I have no pictures of the interior, ma'am, on this one. And the effective year built, it indicates the actual year built, so nothing significant, I would say.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so the model on this property is chosen a cap rate of 510. Do you know how that was arrived at, Mr. Valderrama?
Aside from the three factors and some other factors, no, I have no idea on. It's a model derived cap rate, so I don't know how it was chosen by the model.
Yeah, because I got to tell you, it does look a little bit low to me. And without an explanation, that's what I was wondering. If you can't clarify that, that's fine. That's all my only question. Thank you. Mr. Story, you can proceed.
Thank you, sir. So once again, the subject property is on the north side of Portage. So this is between David Street and Cavalier Drive and Crestview. So Crestview, of course, is in St. James. The improvement is indeed a garden style apartment. It is indeed wood frame. There are 2 3-story structures built in 1986. The site is somewhat irregular, and according to the City of Winnipeg records, it is approximately 3 acres. It has a total of 111 units. I'm sorry, there's a typo saying 11. There's indeed 111 units, which is comprising of 41 bedroom units and 71 2-bedroom units. There are 140 outdoor parking stalls. I had the opportunity to visit this property on Saturday. I had a look at it, and I was going back and forth, Mr. Chair, and you'll appreciate this. I elected prior to this hearing to adjust my cap rate to 5.5. I think it makes sense. It is garden style, but it's from the late 80s. Locationally, it's not, I wouldn't make an adjustment, but I think suffice it to say 5.5. We'll err on the side of optimism and suggest that that's appropriate. So ultimately, we've used the income that has been reported. You'll see here we have used that stabilized vacancy of 3.2%. It has been as low as 1.4. It's been as high as 3.2. There is some bad debt and collection loss, but ultimately, I suppose the average is 3%, but 3.2% is fine. That's again not to capture an exact moment in time, but rather to stabilize the vacancy over the useful economic life of the asset. We have recorded the laundry, parking, and miscellaneous income. So in this case, our effective gross income is indeed higher than the model. Interestingly, the management fee that we were discussing earlier is lower. The 5% is actually lower than what's being recorded. They're suggesting 98,177. 5% calculates to 72,666. Everything else appears to be in order. Utilities are 13.1% of EGI. That would be, excuse me, typical, if not slightly on the low side for what we might expect. And the R&M is 1,685 per door. So that looks good too. Ultimately, the total expenses then are calculated as 729,428. Again, that's based on actuals. That equates to a ratio of 50.2. The assessor's NOI is 735,241. We calculate the actual to be 723,892. Again, adjusting that cap rate to 5.5%, put it right in the middle of the road. Our ultimate capitalized value is then calculated at 13,161,672, which we then round to 13,162. As in the previous files, I've included the R&M breakdown for you on page 11. Same methodology. It supports our request and how we've arrived at our figure. In terms of photos, I do have some. They're we would call these basic suite finishes, and that's reflected in the rent, to be certain. That starts on page 26. These are marketing photos, and you can see, some of the suites have carpeting, some There's some laminate flooring, there's some plank vinyl, and there's some updated cabinets and what have you, but suffice it to say, we would call this, basic finishes. Then we have a floor layout from the owner's website on page 31, showing you their 1-bedroom layouts, and then on page 32, it shows you the 2 bedrooms. So ultimately, I think that is my presentation on this property. And again, with that adjusted cap rate, we are suggesting a value of no more than 13,162,000. And I'm happy to take your questions.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Valderrama?
I have none, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Branson, do you have any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Knight, do you have any questions?
I do not, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Story, so what exactly is the definition of a garden apartment?
Oh, great question. So typically a garden apartment will be, you'll have multiple buildings on site. You'll have a fair bit of area, and you'll have wood frame construction. It's a sort of an infield balconies, typically wooden balconies. In some cases, you will have wooden steps that lead up to the second floor. But generally it's this style. This is a form of garden apartment. Now, there's a large development right behind this one that's a huge garden apartment, and it's more typical of the we'll call the ones that were we know from the 1970s. So by definition, I suppose they're typically less efficient economically because they're built in a row type manner, so with more horizontally than vertically, with lower cost construction, so typically wood frame, and you'll have balconies facing onto a common green space generally. So it's sort of hard to describe them, but most people know them when you see them. But this would be a 1980s version of a garden apartment for sure.
Okay, because I'm looking at it and I see there's only 2 buildings, not a number of buildings on the site.
Right, but so it is well, I guess the land economics of the 1980s and the 1970s were different. If you consider some of the when land was more attainable, they would build larger, more sprawling garden apartments. You'd have a huge amount of parking. Typically, you might even have a tennis court or a pool or something of that nature. But this would be a form of garden apartment, just based on the fact that it is wood frame, the actual style of construction, the multiple buildings. Yes, but there could be many more buildings on site in a garden apartment.
Okay, you're educating me because I always thought that a garden apartment was multiple buildings with a few suites in each one and separate entrances for each suite from the outside, rather than a central hallway like this one has.
That would be the most typical style. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Because this doesn't really fall into the definition of a garden apartment the way I understood it. That's why I asked you.
Sure.
It's sort of more like a 3-story walk-up with a central hall.
Yeah, and where we would make that adjustment, and that's part of when I went to go see it, I had that in mind. And it was sort of illuminating the property right behind it is a classic mid-1970s wood frame garden apartment, exactly like you're saying. And that's the type of building that we would typically make that adjustment for. So that is why I elected to sort of temper that cap rate and not make that adjustment in that situation. But yes, I think you're correct. But this would also typically be considered a garden apartment.
And you did up your cap rate to 5.5%, which would go in with what you've indicated. Your Alta study shows it should be on page number 8. So thank you for that.
Yep.
Okay, the next thing I noticed, though, is that if you look at the statement disclosure from the applicant themselves, they show a slightly higher NOI of 735,241, and I'm sorry, 755, 730.15. So it's about $20,500 higher than what the model shows.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at page, on page 17 of my brief.
So on page 17, hang on. I think I got it from the applicants, or the assessor's brief.
Page 19, I believe.
19 of my brief, okay.
Mhm.
Okay, and sorry, so the NOI that they're reporting 74,903.
The year to date.
Yeah, so. Hold on, let me just check my rental revenue. Just make sure. Okay, so the year-to-date rental revenue, 1,430,000. Yeah, so our potential rent, so there's discounts as well. So is that the issue where the,
Well, they're showing net operating income on the disclosure they sent to the city, the assessment department.
yeah,
It indicated, and that was on the assessor's brief. I don't know where you might have it on yours, but it showed a net operating income of 755, 730, which is about $20,500 higher than the model NOI.
okay, yeah.
Here or there?
I'm not- Sorry, we are using the, just so we're clear though, we are using the rental. Sorry, okay, on page, the rental revenue. The total, or sorry, the total revenue, 1,478,47. Just want to make sure that is exactly. Yeah, so if you look at the effective gross income for 2020, and they're showing us total revenue, 1,478,47. That's the right number, so that is included there. So I'm not sure, it could be some expenses that we haven't included or that we've backed out into CapEx.
You know what? You're pretty close. You know what? It's all over the place, but that's okay. Okay, I don't have any further questions. Thank you. Would anybody like to make a summation on any of the matters we heard today?
I have none, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Story?
No, I think we've said it all, Mr. Chair. I think we're good. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you both for all the material you gave us and your arguments. We thank you because now we got the hard work to do, but we'll endeavor to get it done. So we've now heard all items on the docket today. So I'm therefore asking this hearing be closed.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Valderrama. Thank you, Mr. Story.
Thank you.